Known for his bold storytelling and unique cinematic style, Tinto Brass has made his mark as one of Italy's most controversial filmmakers, both behind the camera and in front of it. With a penchant for pushing boundaries, his films challenged social norms. His films got audiences talking and hearts racing. And with a distinctive visual flair, it's no surprise that Tinto Brass's legacy has endured. By appearing alongside the cast, Tinto Brass's performance added another layer of intrigue to his provocative works. With an artist as unforgettable as this, it's time to pay our respects as we count down the top 10 Tinto Brass movies of all time.
Dovrebbe scegliere quelle da stampare. Non tutte sono venute bene.
Number 10. Miranda.
Affezione a chi? A te o all'anello?
All'anello, naturalmente. A me chi mi guarda.
Filmed in his native Italy, 1985's Miranda carries on Tinto Brass's tradition of using his home country to create incredibly sensual and passionate cinema, the kind many others weren't brave enough to try making at the time. And that's exactly why this one ended up being another hit for him, not just in Europe, but in other parts of the world too. Of course, in other parts of the world, this one was known by the alternative name of The Mistress of the Inn, and that's something which gives us a better idea of the plot here, with it being about a young World War II widow who's running an inn in northern Italy and having romantic flings with many of the men who visit. Obviously then, given the caliber of the director here, Miranda was critically acclaimed upon its release, and not just by general audiences either. No, legendary filmmaker Federico Fellini actually listed this as one of his favorite movies of all time. Number 9. Black Angel.
Restituitele il volantino. Andiamo via. Ma non è ammissibile che...
A relatively late entry into his canon of films, 2002's Black Angel remains a powerful one and yet another example of Tinto Brass's skill for creating highly charged, explicit cinema. So it should come as no surprise that it was another hit with fans of his. And while those fans were located all over the world, a large portion remained in his native Italy, where the movie went by the name of Senso 45. But then, this shouldn't come as a surprise, given it ticks all the boxes for a great Tinto Brass movie in that it features a young married woman undergoing an affair. The only difference here is Black Angel is set during World War II, and the man she's having an affair with is an SS officer. Of course, that's not the most interesting aspect of this movie, however. No, arguably, the most interesting aspect is that Brass himself has a cameo role as a film director, and that makes his appearance pretty meta considering he was the man behind the camera in reality too. Number 8. Mon Amour.
Ho detto che la tua bella fighetta è stata infilzata come una passera allo spiedo.
Even as far as the mid-2000s, Tinto Brass was still going strong as one of cinema's true renegades. And if you needed any evidence that this was the case, you only need look towards his work in 2005's Mon Amour, as there he gives us yet another intimate classic with all the usual style and flair you'd expect from him. Yes, like with much of his prior work, this one focuses on a neglected young woman who starts an affair behind her husband's back and quickly rediscovers the passion she's been missing in her life. Needless to say then, such a plot made for another hit of the director, and he even took the time to make another cameo appearance himself here as a man with cigar. Sadly though, to date, this remains Brass's final feature-length film, as since that point he's only made a couple of shorts, with it seeming unlikely at this point that he'll ever make a full-length movie again.
Puttane in amore, 200.000 copie in un mese.
Chi?
Number 7. The Key.
Careful, Laszlo. I wouldn't follow my husband. You never know where you're going to end up.
Back in the 70s and 80s, when he was arguably at the height of his powers, it seemed near impossible for Tinto Brass to not deliver whenever he directed a movie. And so it should come as absolutely no surprise that 1983's The Key was yet another winning effort for him. And the reason it was so great was because it gave his audience exactly what they wanted to see. Of course, what they wanted to see here was to see a woman rediscover her sensuality, something which played out in the form of a middle-aged housewife starting an affair with her daughter's fiancé. And in doing so, she learns a few tricks, which helps her add some spark back to her own marriage. And eagle-eyed viewers will also note that Tinto Brass once again has a cameo in this one, with him appearing as Father Confessor. Just as well, this didn't distract him from his directing duties then, and he was able to put out a movie as controversial as ever.
What manners? I'm in a bathtub. Get out!
Sorry.
Number 6. Salon Kitty.
Just because I'm not interested in your horse? But that's not the point. There's nothing to be done about it. Sorry, Kitty. You have to close down.
Probably one of Tinto Brass's better-known movies, 1976's Salon Kitty sees him on winning form, with everything that makes him great being on full display. Seriously, it doesn't matter if you're looking for excellent filmmaking, public controversy, or sensual content. It's all here and all turned up to 10. Of course, the reason this one is called Salon Kitty is because it centers around a real-life brothel of the same name, which existed in Berlin during World War II, and which was a popular location for spycraft and espionage to take place. Needless to say then, throughout the movie's 130-minute runtime, it entertains at every turn as audiences watch the intrigue play itself out. What isn't known by everyone, though, is that Salon Kitty actually shares a connection with Stanley Kubrick, as it was the first film set designer Ken Adam worked on after finishing up with 1975's period piece masterpiece, Barry Lyndon.
Come if you like, and if you don't, stay in your office with your priest's ass glued to your headquarters. Goodbye.
At number 5, we have Cheeky.
Becco!
Proving that he's a man of many talents, 2000's Cheeky sees Tinto Brass lean more into his comedic side as he follows the exploits of a young woman looking for apartments in London who ends up having an affair with a real estate agent. That said, as this description suggests, just because it's funny shouldn't suggest it isn't as passionate as ever. Really, you could argue this is one of Brass's most passionate films, as it sees him build upon his early work, with it in some ways serving as a reimagining of his prior 1969 movie, Nero su Bianco. And like with some of his prior work, Tinto once again makes a cameo here as Man in Photoshop. Sure, there would be detractors for this one, as there was for all the director's work, but he dismissed arguments that he was not fighting the cause of women by arguing that in Cheeky, he was creating a feminist lead who was in full control of her own body.
Con l'underground ci si arriva in un attimo.
Dove esattamente?
Qui.
Number 4. The Voyeur.
You want details?
Yeah, details.
All right then. If you must know, I like the way he takes me.
The way he takes you.
By the mid-90s, Tinto Brass was already well established as one of the top filmmakers of his time when it came to people who were working within the genre of the intimate. And this meant when he released The Voyeur in 1994, expectations were understandably high for it. Of course, never one to disappoint his audience then, Brass would deliver another hit here as he adapted the model by Alberto Moravia, which tells the story of a college professor concerned that his wife is having an affair with his father. And while he was tackling this very taboo subject, he was also finding the time to once more make a cameo appearance on screen, this time in an uncredited role. But that's not the most interesting trivia note from this film. No, in a moment worthy of Inception, there's actually a scene in which the characters in The Voyeur are watching another Tinto Brass movie, The Key. And that technically makes this an example of a movie within a movie.
Is there someone else?
I'm afraid I won't be staying.
Number 3. Paprika.
Mi piace, eh? La fa bene la capretta che fruga, mi moglie?
Not to be confused with the popular 2006 anime film of the same name from legendary director Satoshi Kon, 1991's Paprika instead tells a far more passionate and sensual story. But then, by this point in time, audiences expect nothing less, as it was another one directed by Tinto Brass. Really, it would have been strange if he hadn't tried to challenge social norms here by pushing the boundaries of what cinemas would show. And the way he did that specifically this time was to tell the story of a young woman named Paprika who starts working at a brothel in order to help her fiancé get money to start his own business. Of course, as was fairly common by this point, Brass would also make a cameo appearance here too as Dr. Barbarelli. And sharing the screen with his star, Deborah Capriolio, made it a lot easier for the two to engage in a steamy affair of their own all the way throughout filming.
Andremo d'accordo, vero?
D'ora in poi dovrai rispettarmi. Se non per me, per tuo padre.
Number 2. Yankee. In somewhat of a break from his usual style of work, 1966's Yankee sees Tinto Brass try his hand at making a Western instead. That said, given he is Italian, this was about as spaghetti of a Western in tone as the likes of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Django. And that worked well for audiences because in the years since, it's become something of a cult classic. No, the story of a cowboy named Yankee riding into town and starting a feud with a man called Grand Cougar might not have any of the sensual themes which are usually found in Brass's work. But those aren't needed here, as instead, what we get is a more straightforward tale of good versus bad. And the director would certainly put his stamp on things anyway. In fact, before filming, he'd rewrite much of the script to make it less of a fistful of dollars knockoff and more something of his own.
Io non so niente, signore. Nada de nada. L'uomo che cercate non è venuto qua.
Our number 1 pick is Caligula.
I click to see come on in the room. I click to see come on in the name of Senator People Rome. I click to see come on in the name of Senator Rome. Caesar, Rome. Rubbish.
Easily the most well-known film Tinto Brass ever made, and arguably the most well-known movie in its genre, 1979's Caligula is considered a complete cult classic today on account of just how crazy it was that it was ever made at all. After all, it's something of a miracle that so many stars came together to film an explicit movie about the life of the Roman emperor. Yes, an all-star cast made up of Malcolm McDowell, Peter O'Toole, and Helen Mirren, just to name a few, are all on display here as they bear everything, quite literally, in one of the most notorious movies ever put to film. But that's not to say it's all shock value. No, like with all Tinto Brass movies, he's telling a story here and challenging conventions at the same time. Of course, this story was an expensive one to tell in the end. In fact, back in 1979, this would go down as the most expensive independent movie ever made.
Him or God?
And there we have it, the top 10 Tinto Brass movies of all time. No doubt you have your own list, so be sure to let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and get alerted of our next video. We'll hope to see you soon.